So let's say you found the skeleton. How would you tell what it represents? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the stream. I am a rather ill Dapper Dinosaur. I've been sick for days, but you know what? This has been planned. We've been working on this for a while, so I just figured I'm just gonna push through. I've got cough drops. I've got tea. I just took some painkillers, so we're gonna push our way through it. And so with me, I have Eric Vierthaler. Let me put you on screen. And there you go. Introduce yourself,
Hello,
Eric.
everybody. All right, so I am Eric Vierthaler, 92. I have been on Dapper Dino's YouTube channel before, and so this video was actually my idea. And the reason why I say that because when I first converted to Young Earth creationism, this actually was a documentary that I purchased on that day. And also what's pretty perfect is that some of the filming locations was actually done at that Young Earth Creationism Museum that I went to when I kind of converted. So this is really going to be me confronting my past.
All right. And so as far as I know, none of this was filmed anywhere where I've ever been, but as you know, it's a topic that I touch on a lot, and also I'm sort of a big nerd, so I like dragons and ancient mythology and dinosaurs and all that. So Eric is a bit too quiet from Stephanie Wilson.
We were trying to figure that out, but
I mean, maybe see if there's a setting on your iPad there you can up the microphone. Oh, hey, Dark Fool, welcome for the first time. Just a heads up. Super chats today, if any, are going to the Dapper Needs Better Cold Drugs Fund. So, unless they're specifically sent somewhere else, I'm going to use them to do things like buy Dayquil. Or, let's see if I can find make this real. I made this picture the other day.
I couldn't find anything in the settings about the microphone, so
Alright.
maybe just call you on my iPhone.
I'm gonna see if I can up you a little bit in post.
Oh yeah, I'm so sorry, everybody, for the sound problems. We should have planned this soon.
All right, say something now.
Hello?
All right, I'm gonna up you a little bit more because I'm a fancy guy who can do computer stuff.
Okay, yeah, you probably know more about computers than I do.
All right, let's. All right, you're getting consistently into the yellow, so I'm gonna just up the gain just slightly more. All right, you should probably be pretty good now. I'm gonna have to turn down the the volume on the movie, but that'll be fine. But yeah, I'm gonna see if I can't find this that's on screen right now. That sounds like a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah. You see it, Eric?
Do I see the what?
The image? That's
yeah,
that's what I'm gonna start looking for.
oh yeah, I see that there's like a Coke picture.
Yeah, but it's morphine Coke.
Yeah, morphine Coke.
Yeah, I made that picture the other day because I was like, that's what I want.
Yeah.
I just want some straight up morphine in a Coke. All right. So I'm gonna turn this down a little bit just because I upped the gain on my desktop audio. So also there are landscapers with leaf blowers going around. So apologies if that occurs. But let's just dive into this. See. Yeah. I mean, no one needs monetized videos, mine. But yeah, here we go.
This is gonna be a blast from the past.
We think many of your dragon legends could actually be stories about what we today call dinosaurs.
Yeah, that's Ken Ham, and I'm 60% sure Ken Ham is not a werewolf. Just putting that out there. 60% sure.
People would say that the dragon legends of old are obviously not true, but it's only obvious because of their preconception that dinosaurs died out so long ago.
But when you have this universal theme right across the globe, many different continents, many different cultures, and over a vast span of human history, then there's probably going to have to be some universal core truth there.
Dinosaurs are probably used more than anything to convince people of millions of years. I mean, even little kids all know about dinosaurs.
Just say the word
Are dinosaurs used more than anything to convince kids of geological deep time? I just feel like it's not that, but I don't really know. Like, I don't know as a kid what convinces you that deep time is real. Maybe it is that.
But yeah, you know, they're making it out that there's some big conspiracy that scientists are trying to trick you into making you think that evolution is true, but we'll get more into that later on.
All right, we got a audio on the movie's a bit loud. I'm sorry, it's hard for me to judge all these levels from here, especially since we had a last-minute change in Eric's audio levels, so it's... Computers are annoying. It's basically what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, they can be your best friend and your worst enemy, so we're doing the best that we can.
Yeah.
dinosaurs and see what they say next. They probably would say evolution. Those two concepts are inextricably linked.
The most common objections they encounter is that the Bible can't be true because science has disproved it. You ask them what that means, they mean evolution millions of years.
If the soft tissue means what it apparently means, and that is that dinosaurs were around recently. There was no dinosaur age where only dinosaurs lived, and it was millions of years ago. Once you top...
Wait, where only dinosaurs lived? There was never an age where only dinosaurs lived. Dinosaurs always lived alongside non-dinosaurs.
Right, and you know, we even have dinosaurs around now as birds, but of course they don't believe that.
Yeah, it's it's frustrating.
It is, but let's go on.
Oh, millions of years, you have no time for evolution.
The more you study about dinosaurs, they really fit with creation. And the evidence seems to go with humans encountering dinosaurs, and not very long ago.
Creatures like this were supposed to be separated by mankind for 65 to 70 million years. Yet, here we have respectable people writing in their history books, this is what I've seen, this is what I've witnessed.
Why are you picking that one?
It's a good story.
You know someone's gonna say something.
Like what? Got something against Danny?
I kind of feel like skipping past this framing device. It doesn't really add anything, in my opinion.
Yeah, and the acting in this part is pretty bad if you ask me.
Yeah, so basically this is just some framing device where this woman reads a creationist-based book about a dinosaur/dragon that terrorizes some people, and it doesn't add anything. There's no claims that are made. So we're going to skip ahead.
Yeah, I feel like you could take that part out of the documentary and it wouldn't really change or add anything. So
No,
that part felt really, really pointless.
All right, so we're going to skip through that.
And people.
Into the nitty-gritty.
But nobody else. And dragon legends. And the thing...
South America, everywhere people went on. There are literally too many legends to count. They're in every tribe and nation, every people group. And you have them in China, Australia, Africa, Europe, North America, and South America, everywhere people inhabit.
Dragons are really interesting creatures. I think there's not a child with soul so dead that he hasn't become fascinated by dragon stories and dragon legends. And the thing that's always struck me as amazing is that it's not a regional legend. It's not a legend of the China.
It always confuses me. Well, okay, I get it. But it's always a little weird that creationist organizations always drag out people who aren't experts in the field in question to comment on the field in question.
Right, exactly. It's like that's like saying that you're going to have a dentist come in and talk about paleontology.
You can't. I'm moving this screen a little bit so you can see that this guy is being listed as a cell biologist. I don't know how credible he is as a cell biologist, but I can guarantee you he's not very credible as a folklorist. So, like, why even bother? Oh, might have had a disconnection. Hey, Eric, welcome back. Oh, and we can't hear you. Technical problems, everybody. Well, it's true, he is a doctor. Oh, there it is.
Hello?
Hello. I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Chinese, but nobody else. Or a legend of the Europeans and nobody else. It's everybody's legend.
Now, a legend is, of course, a legend. It's a fairy tale. But is there, in fact, most anthropologists will tell you that whenever you have a legend...
I gotta say, I really like that mosasaur skull in the back. I want one.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And so, I was want to add on that by what he said. And now, yes, there is some truth to some legends and whatnot. But when he's saying, oh, well, it has to mean humans and dinosaurs coexisted, it just seems like he's just jumping to conclusions. It's like...
Oh, yeah. Well, and another thing is... All
right. Oh, sorry.
You cut out a little bit. I think your connection is a little shaky. But, yeah, it's just like, oh, people around the world have legends of big reptiles. It's like, well, okay, reptiles are scary. And sometimes poisonous.
And there's also some relatively big reptiles around today, like crocodiles and whatnot. And so some of them could be about that. And so basically, think of it like this with this analogy. Let's say you have a box, and it kind of feels vibrating. Either there's a machine in there, a rabbit, or whatnot. All right, so think about all the possibilities for why that box is being that way. You really have to think, okay, what truly is the best answer for it? And after much research, I'm just honestly convinced that humans and dinosaurs is just not the best scenario. And there's also a lot of legends of mermaids too. So is he going to tell us that mermaids really do exist?
I mean, maybe. I doubt it, because that wouldn't... I mean, late surviving dinosaurs also wouldn't help creationism, but it's even harder to spin it as if it did for mermaids.
Right, yeah, and they're going to talk about that with the coelacanth later on, but we'll
spoilers.
Get to that. Oh, sorry.
Or mythology, that there's usually something that happened that started that myth.
So the point is there is some consistent threads in these different cultures, South Sea Islands, South Pacific, the American Indians, so forth. So when you find the similar kinds of legends that suggest that either a common legend exchange or those legends deriving from some kind of historical antecedent.
If we're to believe that they're mythological, that really presents a logical problem for us, because there is a consistency that happens throughout all the dragon legends. Of course, dragon legends can become sensational.
How much consistency is there really, though? Big and scaly is about as much as I get.
Yeah, that's a pretty vague description of a dinosaur. I mean, what about a dinosaur with a sail on its back? It has long arms and a crocodile-like snout. It's like, try to be more specific about it. And some of these dragon legends, and this is some of the stuff that I brought up with my debate with Cody. One of the dragon legends that is advocated to be a Stegosaurus, it says in the dragon legend, meanwhile the dragon vomited from his nostrils 2 streams of loathsome flames. There was no evidence that Stegosaurus ever could do that. And as the monster neared, he showed the head of a bear with red eyes like coals of fire, hairy tufted ears, lion's claws, a serpent's tail, and a griffin's body. That sounds nothing like a stegosaurus.
Yeah, I would have trouble coming up with a worse description of a stegosaurus.
Right, it's like, have you ever even seen a stegosaurus?
No. And even dragons aren't consistent with each other across cultures. Like Stephanie pointed out that in East Asian countries that have sort of Chinese-derived dragon legends, they're extremely different than European or North African dragon legends. So
yeah, it's like, if these dragon legends really were honestly describing dinosaurs, wouldn't they more accurately describe dinosaurs with their anatomy, or some with feathers? But of course, they'll never acknowledge that.
Yeah, it's a very poor argument.
You know, a lot of your pagan religions attach some sort of meaning to these things. Like a lot of times in Chinese mythology, a dragon would, you know, be responsible for the tides, or it would control.
All right, that wasn't a Chinese dragon. Let's go back a little bit.
It'll be responsible.
Okay, so you've got what clearly looks like a modern fantasy magic circle going on in the background. And then you've got what's clearly a Western dragon skull and some sorcerer-looking dude in bad CGI.
Right.
So CGI would have done like 5 years ago.
But yeah,
at least show images that fit. Sorry.
But yeah, the only thing slightly resembling a dinosaur with that dragon is horns on its head, which a Triceratops had. But a Triceratops never had sharp teeth like that. So that throws out that argument.
Yeah. It just bugs me that like you can't even get visuals that match what you're talking about.
Yeah, be consistent, bro.
Plus, I'm gonna go ahead and say they probably stole this image. Maybe it's fair use. I don't know, but probably not.
Responsible for the tides, or it would control the water or something like that. But if you scrape away all the sensationalism, you actually have a very real creature at the bottom of, and that is consistent throughout really the entire world. You just have a large scaled reptile that has many of them fly, some of them don't, but the ones that do fly have wings like a bat. And
also not wings like a pterosaur, because pterosaur wings are not like bat wings. Got it.
Right. He has no idea what a pterosaur is.
I mean, probably not. Although at least they're showing one on screen. Although, where's the pteroid bones, guys? Where's the pteroid bones?
From some research I've done, that's the same pterosaur that they have at the Creation Museum in.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it is.
Kentucky, and so, from my understanding, they filmed both at the Creation Museum and they also filmed at the Glendive Dinosaur, the Glendive Dinosaur and Fossil Museum in Montana, which is where I have.
The thing that bugs me with this is just how poor the reconstruction is.
Oh, it is.
I mean, the fingers are coming out at the wrong angle. There's no pteroid bones. There's no pycnofibers. I mean, the crest is way too skinny. I can't really tell the shape on the beak, but it looks wrong from where I'm sitting. It's just... Even when you're trying to portray a pteranodon, you can't even get that right.
They're carnivorous, and they're basically going to gnaw your face off. And it is consistent no matter where you go.
That's definitely the Creation Museum. That's their horribly inaccurate Jurassic Park. Doesn't even look good for a Jurassic Park raptor.
And going back to the pterosaur, there's even some YECs who even claim pterosaurs are dinosaurs, which they're
not
at all. And from my understanding, Velociraptor's hands, they weren't like that. They were more like that. That's at least from my understanding.
One thing is, sorry about the ticking. It's due to some audio issues. I've had to up the gain on my desktop audio, and unfortunately that means that my noise filter, I would have to turn it up a bit too high to get rid of all that ticking. So we're having a little bit of an audio problem today, and it's... we're probably going to have to do a part 2 to this, and if we do, we'll try to get together earlier and hammer out as many of these little audio problems as we can. Sorry about that.
And that truly is remarkable.
They look like big reptiles with long tails, with scales, with sharp teeth, claws, Oftentimes 3 claws, by the way.
Oftentimes 3 claws, according to whom? Dragon digit counts are pretty darn inconsistent.
And where's the dragon legends of an ankylosaurus or sauropods?
Well, yeah.
Most of the ones that they talk about are carnivores. So, what about all the herbivores?
Well, those are the scary ones.
Yeah.
Which many of the dinosaurs did have 3 claws, like the theropods. So I believe they're what many people have called dragons, or have been translated to the word dragon, really reflect a human experience, widespread among almost all cultures, of having witnessed at some point in history very, very large.
Hey, is that a Ceratosaurus?
I think it is.
Oh, yeah. Guess who had a guest spot in this video, but didn't even know it.
That is the meanest Ceratosaurus I have ever seen.
I know.
mean,
I look way friendlier than that. In fact, actually, I think that's too many. No, it's just weird, like, asymmetrical premaxillary teeth.
But yeah, Dapper, I can imagine that you're probably surprised by the fact that you never even knew that you had a cameo in this documentary.
Yeah, I didn't know. They must have caught me while I was sleeping or something.
Yeah, or something.
Very frightening reptiles.
You know, the dragon legends, the stories of these dragons, they always talk about these huge reptilian beasts with fierce teeth and prickly spines, and they just sound so much like dinosaurs.
It's like,
they don't.
Knowing about...
Yeah, that's the thing. They only sound like dinosaurs if you don't know what a dinosaur is like. It's like the minute that you learn anything past what you might have learned in like 4th grade about dinosaurs, suddenly these dragons stop sounding like... But... Okay.
Julius Caesar or Alexander the Great, we have to rely on historical records of these things, because you can't scientifically prove that Julius Caesar existed. It's always a matter of history. And I think dragons, a lot of that will be widespread historical writings of such creatures, including, for instance, the Chinese calendar, where you have 12 animals. One of them is a dragon. I was born on the year of a dragon, but all the animals are treated as equally real. So it does seem like the Chinese people...
Yeah, because the Chinese people at the time believed in real dragons. I mean, so what?
And yeah, and the thing about Chinese dragon legends, a lot of them are supposed to just be an omen of good or bad luck.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you look at it, and that doesn't look like a dinosaur. It doesn't look like anything.
Nothing like a dinosaur. I don't know any dinosaur that has a mustache like Mario. Mamma mia!
Well, they're clearly chimerical creatures. They have the bodies of snakes. They have like the arms of like, their arms are like bird feet. Their heads are more like a cross between a lion and a human, and they often have deer antlers. So it's nothing about the Chinese dragon says this is a real thing.
Yeah, that was even something what I brought up with my debate with Cody. I'm trying to find it, but if you really go back in the further back that you go with Dragon Legends, they actually start to sound more like that. Sound and look a lot more like snakes.
Yeah, it's true. The oldest Dragon Legends, they just sound like exaggerated serpent. In fact, the word dragon used to be essentially interchangeable with the word snake.
Yeah, like here's this one. Here's a legend from Herodotus, which some YECs advocate that this is a pterosaur, probably only because of the wings, but that's the only similarity that they have is just the wings.
Yeah, and pterosaurs don't look at all like snakes.
Yeah. Have they ever even seen a fossil of a pterosaur? Or
they don't care about accuracy. It just helps.
Here it is.
Yeah, I mean, that looks like a snake trying to eat an elephant, and just for no reason, there's like dog feet on it.
Probably because they just had an imagination. It's like people can have an imagination.
And to be fair, people were pretty skeptical in Europe of the existence of elephants by the Middle Ages, too. Because what sounds more realistic? A big old serpent with legs? Or an animal with a tentacle nose that has big old ears and tusks and is the size of a dragon. I mean, honestly, big old dragon sounds a little bit more reasonable if you're considering it's basically just a snake.
People did see a creature we would now call a dragon, which they called the long.
Actually, there are a lot of legends of dragons being used for breeding. The Chinese have stories about breeding dragons. There are artifacts that show people riding these things.
That looks like a drawing of one of the well-known fake Ica stones.
Mm-hmm. And what's funny, he just admitted that people rode dinosaurs, and YECs like Ken Ham will say, "Oh, well, we never said humans are dinosaurs. We never said that humans rode dinosaurs." But yet in Dinosaurs of Eden, which is by Ken Ham, you know, he has people riding dinosaurs on that. So
yeah, it's. Even the creationists are embarrassingly inconsistent about this internally.
all right, so it's like if people really did ride dinosaurs, where's all the fossilized dinosaur saddles?
Yeah, that's true. I want a dinosaur saddle, or yeah.
Quite remarkable that to many people that Australian Aboriginal people actually have accounts of their ancestors having encountered creatures that today, by any reckoning, you'd describe as being dinosaurs.
Or maybe just megalania, which overlapped with human colonization of Australia by the Aboriginals. Here, let's pull up a picture of megalania, which is a lizard, but it's an enormous lizard. We'll see if we can get a nice size comparison. So yeah, gee, I wonder why the Aboriginal Australians might have a cultural memory of a giant lizard-like creature. Would it be because they encountered giant lizards for reals, but that aren't dinosaurs? I don't know. Maybe.
Right, and it goes back to the analogy that I said in the beginning. It's like, that's like saying that I'm going to tell you, I know somebody who got stabbed by something sharp. Well, that can mean a pencil, a pair of scissors, a knife. It's like, that's a very vague description, and they're doing the same thing with dinosaurs. They're being so vague about it.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's just like, look, people have come into conflict with reptiles throughout history. Some reptiles are poisonous, some are big enough to eat people, you know, some attack livestock. So, yeah. Let's keep on. I think this is a much more reasonable, though, explanation for Aboriginal tales of giant reptiles, because it's literally a giant reptile.
I think so, too.
The basis of scientists' reconstructions from fossils. On a personal level, I recall meeting a university researcher in the Northern Territory in Darwin after giving a presentation there a couple of years ago. And she said that she'd been working with the local Larrakia Aboriginal people. And they had a word for a fierce creature that lived in the local swamps there that used to terrorise the first Aboriginal people who'd come to that area via canoes from another country far away. And when this university researcher said to them, "Oh, that word obviously means crocodile," the Larrakia people responded, "No, we've got a different word for crocodile. This other creature, in fact, looks very similar to some of your dinosaurs in your children's book about dinosaurs."
There is an Indian...
Yeah, I'm sure a hadrosaur was terrorizing the Aboriginals.
I mean, unless if somebody really, really pissed it off, but I mean, hadrosaurs, from my understanding, are not the most violent dinosaurs out there.
Hey, there's some new evidence that they might have eaten crabs.
Oh, I actually never knew that.
Well, it's still tentative, but yeah. So they might have been vicious predators of crabs.
But yeah, you know, but they probably weren't vicious about other stuff.
No, probably not.
legend called the Thunderbirds. And according to legend, these huge bird-like creatures would fly and they would actually be able to bring thunder with them. And at first that seems sensational. But if you start looking at the evidence, things change just a little bit. Because what is in the Black Hills in South Dakota, the legend is that these giant thunderbirds would actually fly to the top of the Black Hills and they would like nest there. Now what is fascinating is that scientists have long believed that those kind of gigantic creatures needed strong winds to propel them to high heights. And so in the West, where you have these gigantic thunder.
Yeah, except that it's not actually true that even the largest pterosaurs couldn't fly on their own power. Pterosaurs were exceptionally low density. And there's no reason to think they needed a storm front to get airborne.
And what makes them so sure it's a pterosaur? It's like, what if it could be just some other kind of bird, like a bald eagle or something?
Andrew Stoll says, I have a Thunderbird, 1966.
Nice comment.
Storms. It is really postulated these gigantic pteranodons would catch thermal updrafts of these storms that would lift them to the top of places like the Black Hills. So from a
Yeah, flying animals, especially large ones, are well known to fly especially high during thunderstorms because getting hit by lightning is definitely not going to damage you at all. It'll be fine.
And that wouldn't prove that pterosaurs lived 6,000 years ago, because there are tons of winged creatures that have been around for thousands of years that aren't pterosaurs.
Yeah, this whole line of argument leads to nowhere.
An Indian's perspective that is trying to pull meaning from the things in nature, they would look at these what they would call thunderbirds and go, wow, they are bringing thunder. But it's actually what's really happening is that it's the thunderstorms that are actually bringing the pteranodons.
This is taken from a book named After the Flood, where he recounts dinosaurs in the form of flying reptiles were a feature of Welsh life until surprisingly recent times. As late as the beginning of the present century, elderly folk at Penllyn in Glamorgan used to tell of a colony of winged serpents that lived in the woods around Penllyn Castle. As Mary Trevelyan tells us, the woods around Penllyn Castle, Glamorgan, had the reputation of being frequented by winged serpents, and these were the terror of old and young alike. An aged inhabitant of Penllyn, who died a few years ago, said that in his boyhood the winged serpents were described as very beautiful. He said it was no old story invented to frighten children, but a real fact. His father and uncle had killed some of them, for they were as bad as foxes for poultry. The old man attributed the extinction of the winged serpents to the fact that they were terrors in the farmyards and coverts. This is a pteranodon, an example of one. And by the way,
that is not a pteranodon.
Yeah, like we said, they really don't understand what a pterosaur is, a dinosaur is. I mean, it's like, if you're going to try to argue what something is, you should know what it is. It's like, that's like saying that I'm going to call a truck a car.
Yeah, and of course the other thing is, it's like, okay, look, you found a folklore story of a potentially mythical, or potentially, I guess, not mythical creature. Go find a body, find a skull, go find some physical evidence, because people can say whatever they want. It's one of the reasons why eyewitness testimony is not taken seriously in zoology. You can say you found whatever the crap kind of animal you want, but until you find a specimen, there is no reason for anyone to take you seriously.
And here's one thing I want to add about eyewitness testimony. I'm going to sound a little bit of a hypocrite because what I said in my debate with Ken Hovind, but sometimes eyewitness testimony, like say, maybe if you have backing evidence for it, like say for an example, I have a friend, say if I were to have a friend named Joe who's dating some other girl named, I don't know, Kate, and then say if I were to tell them, hey, I saw Kate kissing some other guy, and then say if the way how Kate changes her behavior and whatnot, that could, you know, potentially argue like that she is cheating on so-and-so. But if you're going to make a claim about eyewitness testimony, it has to be backed by the physical evidence. If it is, great. Then we can take what they said seriously. But if you don't have that backing evidence for it, then that speaks for itself.
Right, and one of the big differences is, in your story about eyewitness, those are all things that we know can happen, but if you're going to claim that an eyewitness account for the existence of something for which the only evidence is an eyewitness account, and in this case it's not even an eyewitness account, then that's just simply not enough. Because people can claim to have seen anything. You need something physical to back it up before we can say that then eyewitness accounts can be evidence. Because in the case of like, oh, I saw so-and-so cheating on someone else, well, we know people cheat on people, so... Okay, but if you said, oh, I saw so-and-so floating 3 feet above the floor with their eyes glowing red, and it's like, well, did you though?
Different.
Right. And that's basically what they're saying. They're branching off into a thing where we don't even know this is a realistic possibility. And they provide no physical evidence, except a fossil of something that isn't a pteranodon that they're going to call a pteranodon.
By the way, not all of them were huge, with big long wings. And in Beowulf, it describes 2 different kinds. One which had massive...
What?
Oh, Beowulf, I'm sorry, but I know you had to pause it so soon. I'm sorry, but using Beowulf as an argument is such a bad argument. But they'll get into more of that later in the documentary. But I'm sorry, that's such a really bad argument because Beowulf is fiction, and they argue, oh well, the creature in it sounds like a real creature. Yeah, and The Lion King's a fictional story about real animals, so are you going to tell me that, oh, because they use real animals in that Timon and Pumbaa must exist in real life?
Well, and one of the things is that Grendel is described in Beowulf. He's described as a cursed descendant of Cain from the Bible. So he's clearly more of a human than he is of anything else.
Yeah, and they also even talk about the creature being bipedal like a human. And there have been some YECs who argue, oh, it's bipedal. T-Rex was bipedal, so it must be a T-Rex. But bipedal like a human.
Right.
Being bipedal like a T-Rex and like you and I is completely different.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go on.
Of huge wings, which we know existed from fossils, 30 foot and more wingspan. But there's another kind of winged serpent that was smaller, but it was just as much a pest. Not just in Beowulf, but in England and to the North American Indians and Central American Indians, etc.
Interesting, there's a Scandinavian king called Beowulf, and there's a very famous poem about his exploits. And if you read about his description of this big beast that he killed because it was terrorizing the villagers, it's a very accurate description of a Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Most people...
No, it's just not, though.
Yeah, like, they say like that it had arms that were ripped off. Alright, so from my research I've done about T-Rex's arms, its arms could bench press about a few hundred or so pounds. Do you really think that a person could rip off arms like that could bench press 100 or so pounds? Maybe for Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, like on super steroids or something.
Yeah, and of course we're seeing a picture, and even if we assume that this is a picture of Beowulf, which is not cited, so I don't know. Yeah, there's the last monster in the story that Beowulf kills is a dragon, sure. But Grendel isn't, neither is his mother.
People say Beowulf is entirely mythical because there's all these monsters in it. But if you read Beowulf, the poem, it doesn't say fairies and magic elves. It's talking about the Grendel. It's talking about a bipedal monster with giant mouth and big teeth that ate people, just like we might imagine a theropod dinosaur might do.
In the Agat National Park in Nebraska, there are these structures in the side of the rocks called Devil's Corkscrews. And for years, scientists thought that the plants or some sort of plant created these spiral structures that descend from the surface down about 6 feet. But it was not until they started excavating.
So yeah, I pulled up where Grendel is actually described, right? Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit here. Okay. So, yeah. So Grendel's a demon, or an enemy from hell, found on Helle, was the grimme gast, was the ghastly, grim and ghastly Grendel. And then he's kin of Cain, okay? Cain is Kühne. So clearly, Grendel is more of a humanoid monster. He's a demon who's a descendant of Cain. Yeah. And it's the Cain from the Bible, because we've got Das the He Eberslor. That, or which he killed it. It's hard to get it word for word, but that same Abel which killed, sorry, that same one whom he killed Abel, right there. I mean, it's in the text. It's not even a question. You just haven't read it. Is the only solution you can come to.
Yeah, it's like if you're gonna use Beowulf as an argument for humans and dinosaurs coexisting 6,000 years ago, you really should read it first.
Yeah. Oh well, we'll keep going.
Them that they found these little fossils of beavers at the bottom of them, and they found out that these beavers made these wild corkscrew lodges in the rock, and evolutionary timelines would put this beaver to be extinct about 30 million years ago. But the problem with that is that American Indians know full well what those corkscrews were, and if you would have asked a Lakota Indian, they would have told you they were beaver lodges.
My point with Haas Eagle is...
Citation on that? And how does that help your idea that dinosaurs are dragons? Complete tangents.
The Maoris tell a legend about a giant eagle. And it's easy for us to say, oh, giant eagle, pff, whatever. But it's been verified and it's published. It's the real deal. It was a giant eagle. So if they were right about the giant eagle, then perhaps peoples have been telling the truth in their legends of other creatures too.
Well, then find the bodies, like we did with the giant eagle. Because he's right, there was a giant eagle in New Zealand, New Zealand. Okay.
And?
Right? So find the recent body of one of these dragons and then show it to be a recent dinosaur.
Most people today accept that dinosaurs have become extinct, and even creationists who look at the accounts of apparent recent human dinosaurial contact would say, look, it does seem that dinosaurs are extinct. However, there are some tantalising accounts of sightings in very recent decades from various places around the world. In the Congo, for example, the local people there talk of a creature they call Mokele Mbembe. And when Westerners have gone in with drawings of African creatures and dinosaur handbooks, and they've pointed to pictures of, say, the hippopotamus or the rhino, the people have said, no, that's not Mokele Mbembe. And when shown a picture of a sauropod dinosaur in a dinosaur handbook, they've pointed to something like a small sauropod dinosaur. Another example comes to mind, the Lake Murray region of Papua New Guinea. There were people there.
And maybe it just could have been an elephant's trunk in there. Oh, you were?
I was. So what I was saying is the largest animal that was found in the last 150 years or so in terms of actual land vertebrates was the okapi, an animal that's the size of a medium-sized deer. Since then, no animal larger than that has been found, and pretty much nothing even close to it. Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's alright. And man, a lot of the sauropod-like descriptions of Mokele Memble are really, really outdated depictions of Mokele, the depictions of sauropods. So that's very telling. And maybe it just could have been an elephant's trunk in the distance and made it look like a sauropod. I think that that's a lot more reasonable.
Yeah, in the absence of any physical evidence, virtually anything is more reasonable than this is a real living sauropod.
Out in a canoe, and as they looked under their canoe, they saw a large creature swim under the canoe that had what looked like triangular plates extending down its back and all the way down its long tail. And the people speak there of large nesting sites adjacent to the water's edge.
So now it was a Stegosaurus sauropod cross?
I guess. Like, so what kind of dinosaur do they think it is?
Yeah, that's the thing. We've now left behind any actual dinosaurs that we know of. And we're just like, oh, it was big, and it was reptile-y. Okay, let's make it a dinosaur.
Which have been clearly left by a large...
Today that have, spikes like that swim in waters, so it could have just been misidentification.
Yeah, it's... Nothing so far has actually even been evidence of the existence of this animal, even less so its identity as a dinosaur.
Creature.
If you only had one or two stories that sounded a bit similar to dinosaurs, you could see it as just a coincidence. But when you have this universal theme right across the globe, many different continents, many different cultures, and over a vast span of human history, then there's probably going to have to be some universal core truth there. In fact, the late Dr. Carl Sagan, one of the most well-known of all the world's evolutionists, took it so seriously.
Carl Sagan, the evolutionist, by which you mean Carl Sagan, the astrophysicist?
Yeah, they probably only say that because he accepts the scientific consensus about evolution. It's like, well, that's the job of a scientist.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, hit like, everybody, unless you hate this, in which case hit dislike. But hit one of them.
That he actually wrote a book called The Dragons of Eden to try and answer this question as to how come there are so many different stories of dragons that are very similar to the dinosaurs when no one's ever seen a dinosaur. And the answer he came up with in his book was essentially that, we evolved from reptiles, so part of our brain is a sort of a leftover.
Well, that's a stupid answer, but I don't actually know if that was an answer that anyone really gave.
Of when we lived in the age of the reptiles, and so dragon legends are really, if you like, inherited memories from the age of reptiles. Now, there was an embarrassed silence from many of his evolutionary colleagues because, of course, there's no scientific credibility to the idea that memories are inherited. That you might remember what some ancestor did when he was serving Cleopatra or something like that. But the importance of that little account was that one of the world's leading evolutionists took this issue so seriously that he tried to explain it, even though he didn't do a very good job. A much better explanation is that the Bible is right, that man and dinosaur did live together, and what we see are the somewhat corrupted legends, somewhat corrupted stories of a time when people and dinosaurs did really know each other.
Or that was just his hypothesis.
Right. It's like, oh, you found someone who doesn't know much about biology, and he tried to explain something in biology. He did a bad job. Okay.
Why he's not a biologist.
Right. Okay. Like, that's nothing.
Some people saw Danny coming. He was huge with scales and they ran away.
And man did see dinosaurs.
In National Bridges National Monument, Utah, there's actually some carvings, petroglyphs, done by the Indians that even an evolutionist in an evolutionary textbook
see a goat. Looks like a turtle or a flying squirrel. At the top part.
So, oh, sorry about that. I just
I don't see any dinosaur.
Yeah, but let's keep going. We'll see what they come up with.
Says looks like a sauropod dinosaur, and we've actually had a team go out there. They've seen it, photographed it, did a wax cloth impression of it, and it just looks like a sauropod dinosaur.
I mean, a really bad reconstruction of it.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that it doesn't actually look like a sauropod dinosaur. It only looks like that if you ignore the parts that don't look like a sauropod. Right.
And look, the thing was originally just a bunch of, just like a bunch of stains on the rock, and it made it somewhat resemble a sauropod. Sauropods' tails did not drag like that. And here's the original unenhanced carving. You could barely even see it.
Yeah, it's...
But of course the evolutionists would say, well, no.
I love this one.
That's such a bad argument.
This is a dinosaur. It's like, is it? Is it even an animal? Because if it is, I can't tell. Yeah, it's... This could be anything. It doesn't even look like it's an animal.
It must be some mythical animal. Why? Because dinosaurs didn't live with people. Well, how do you know that? And so to me, that sort of evidence, when you look at your dragon legends, many of the descriptions of those dragons actually fit nicely what we would call dinosaurs. And many of your dragon carvings, for instance, that you see, dragon paintings around the world, they look like some of the dinosaurs that we would understand existed from the fossil record.
The exact date was...
Oh, hold on. I like this pot. Okay.
They look like some of the dinosaurs that we would understand.
Okay, so that head is on the animal's tail. Look at the foot at the bottom of the screen. I'm going to bring it up so you guys can see it. That's a hind leg. The toes are pointing behind the head. I don't know of any dinosaurs that had heads on their tails. Do you, Eric? I mean, maybe.
I don't at all. Man, it's like the spikes are on like its neck, and then it goes to its back. I don't know of any dinosaur that has spikes on its neck. And what's funny, they have that exact same pot at the Montana Creation Museum, and so seeing this is really a blast from the past. But even when I was at YEC, I never used that pot as an argument, and I also never even used that very vague kindergarten-like drawing of a dinosaur. And so,
yeah. Well, I mean, this thing is so obviously not a real animal. I mean, its head is on backwards, people. Like, no animal works like that.
And existed from the fossil record.
The exact date was 1186 AD. And it's a stone temple. It's in the Angkor Wat temple complex around Cambodia. And in a jungle area.
There's a number of stone carvings of things that are familiar to us today, along with Hindu and Buddhist mythology. And very distinctively, there's one that looks very much like a stegosaur, as reconstructed from...
Except for the part that it doesn't look like a stegosaur, and those same, well, plates you can also see repeated directly below it as a decorative motif.
Yeah, they're just leaves behind it, and there's no thagomizers on the tail. Stegosaurs had more stiff, ragged tails that were more upwards and not out dragging. The head's way too big. Stegosaurs in real life, they had more like horse-like heads, and the head on that has mammalian-like ears. There's no evidence that Stegosaurs ever had any ears like that. And also, from recent fossils, from my understanding, Stegosaurs had more longer necks.
Oh yeah, they had much longer necks and smaller heads.
So that blows that out.
The only way that this even vaguely resembles a Stegosaurus is that it has a decorative motif behind the animal that is repeated in all of the other little rosettes. So there's no reason to think it's actually part of the animal. And even if those were intended to be plates, it still wouldn't look like a Stegosaurus. I mean, it might look like a Stegosaurus that was drawn by like a 2-year-old, But it certainly doesn't look like a stegosaurus based on anyone having seen a stegosaurus.
Fossils by scientists. And the question becomes, how did
they would
the
depict
people...
it more accurately?
Well, let's see if we can find some other examples from that same temple of these little rosette things.
But yeah, they really need to stop you using that stegosaurus carving as an argument. Well, to be fair, a lot of YECs have like answers in Genesis, but Ken Hovind, even when I debated him, he used it as an argument. He said, "Oh, I don't care. I'm still going to use this argument." That's just confirmation bias at its finest. But of course,
okay,
he also said that he has no idea what a dinosaur is.
Well, yeah, he did say that. Let's see. Here we go. So the problem is, if these are plates here on the quote Stegosaurus, what are they on this thing at the bottom, or what are they on this thing on the top? They're not plates. It's part of a decorative motif that gets repeated throughout the temple. The animals aren't simply placed on no background. In fact, this is even a higher quality image, where we can see that it looks like it has ears or horns or something. So what part of that is Stegosaurus? Like, okay, no. Is this oh gosh, darn it, Eric. But yeah, is this a Stegosaurus Triceratops mix? No, it's just a bull with a flower in the background. I think we lost Eric, so hopefully he'll come back. But and then we got this guy. Is it a bird? I don't even know what it is. I'm pretty sure it doesn't have spikes sticking out from all over its body. Hopefully Eric comes back. Oh, Eric, are you back? Oh, can't hear you.
You can or can't?
Now I can. There you go. You're back.
Okay, good. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. It's probably just my...
Oh, and he's gone again. We're going to continue on until he comes back.
Connection. Come on, work.
Oh, I can hear you.
All right, awesome.
People who carved that stone 800 years ago have carved so beautifully a stegosaur without having...
Oh, we also have someone claiming that it's the thing on top or maybe the bottom was a bear. But that's the thing. I can't even tell.
It's so vague.
Yeah, these things are so poorly carved that they're essentially unidentifiable. And the only reason anyone thinks that this is a Stegosaurus is because when you look at it in isolation, those things kind of look like they could be backplates. But when you look at them in context, it's pretty obvious that they're not.
Had any knowledge about what's in today's encyclopedias. And the clear conclusion is...
That doesn't even look like the carving. Not even a little bit. And that's still a pretty inaccurate Stegosaurus.
But at least that's a lot more accurate than what's on that carving.
Oh, yeah.
So,
and it's distinctly missing giant ears. Flash horns.
Yeah, and the giant head.
Right.
They were familiar with those creatures because they were alive at the same time.
Unless it was living, how could they get its anatomy correct? They had to...
That's a good question. They didn't. That's the thing.
Yeah, and so this guy here used to be the founder of that creation museum that I went to and converted to, but that guy retired. So he's no longer the curator there, but it's now run by a guy named Robert. And
okay.
And yeah, everybody, where this guy's at is where that I converted to YEC. So seeing, those dinosaurs behind him and all, the plants and whatnot is such a blast from the past.
I mean, it does look like they have some cool displays. I'll give them that.
Yeah, they do.
See it in order to reproduce it correctly. And that's just one of over 80 instances.
I mean, that thing has ears. I don't even know what it's supposed to be.
I think that looks like fins, so maybe they're trying to argue it's a plesiosaur, but I don't know of any plesiosaur that has ears like that.
Well, yeah, and I mean, only mammals have ears like that.
Right, so are they trying to inadvertently say that plesiosaurs are mammals?
Maybe?
Around the world, in every single continent, where it's been found that humans and dinosaurs have coexisted because the humans have reproduced dinosaurs in one art form or another.
There's a cathedral.
That carving.
It's a cool carving, but it doesn't look like a dinosaur. That's the thing.
But the huge problem with that carving, so at the Montana Creation Museum, they argue that it was either Coelophysis or Gallimimus. So Gallimimus, I believe, had feathers, right?
Yeah, it did.
Right, and so if
The thing is, though,
Gallimimus, where's the feathers?
Well, if the part of the problem is, did Coelophysis have feathers? And the answer there is, I don't know.
From my understanding, no, because it was in around the Triassic, and from my understanding, there wasn't really any theropods that had feathers at that time, from my understanding, unless if further evidence comes around. And so,
Well, the problem comes with phylogenetic bracketing. We don't know if, in fact, the filamentous integument that we find on ornithischians is homologous to feathers. Then that pushes the existence of protofeathers to the common ancestor of theropods and ornithischians, which means that it's not ruled out for any theropod unless we have extensive skin impressions, like we actually do for Ceratosaurus.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and another huge problem with that carving. So Gallimimus and Coelophysis had 3 claws like this, not like that.
Yeah, opposable thumbs aren't a thing for dinosaurs.
Right? Yeah, it had 3 claws, but it's not accurate to its anatomy.
Right.
So throws it off.
In the UK, Carlisle Cathedral, which has been there a very long time, and one of the bishops buried there 600 years ago has on the brass trimmings around his tomb a number of engravings of animals, many of which are familiar to us today, but there's also some that look very much like sauropod dinosaurs. In fact, any 21st century child would immediately recognize them as being sauropod dinosaurs.
I mean, that's only because 21st century children usually have a poor understanding of what dinosaurs look like, but okay.
And what makes them so certain, like, that children are going to be the most reliable people to tell you what is true?
Well, the idea is supposed to be that it's so obvious that even kids get it. Like, well, yeah, except that kids often come to the wrong conclusion, so that's not really evidence.
Yeah.
And so when we think about the evolutionary view that says dinosaurs became extinct 65 million years ago, and then we look at these sauropod dinosaur engravings on this 600-year-old tomb, how did they get there?
The oldest artifact that we have, period, is an Egyptian slate that commemorates...
That is not the oldest artifact, period. It is the oldest instance of Egyptian hieroglyphics. There are older Egyptian artifacts from the pre-dynastic period. I mean, you can't even get the very most basic things about this right. I know where he's going. It's the Narmer tablet. It's at the front of every copy of Gardner's Middle Egyptian Grammar. I know because I own a copy. Like $80. It was ridiculous.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's expensive.
Yeah.
An Egyptian king. And Hierakonpolis slate is one of the names given to this artifact. And on one side it shows him grasping the...
Oh, hey, wait, it's not the Narmer tablet. I guess I'm wrong. Still probably not the oldest artifact ever, though, because we have artifacts from, 40, 50,000 years ago. In fact, technically, we have artifacts from, 1 million years ago, if you go in with, the very, very old flint daggers and whatnot.
Head of his recently defeated foe and about to chop the head off. So it's a slate saying, look how great I am.
Oh, hey,
and
now
on
we're
the
at
back,
the Narmer tablet.
it's got...
That's not even the same artifact. Holy crap. That was not the other side of that same tablet, dude. They're not even shaped the same way. if you're gonna lie, at least don't show the evidence of your lie right in front of people.
Got some Egyptian.
Yeah, that's just. It's like that's like saying that you're gonna play a game of rock, paper, scissors, and then they do this rather than like that. It's a dead giveaway.
Yeah, and also, I know he's going to say that these things at the bottom of the screen are dragons, but they have distinctly lion heads, so I don't know why they're being identified as dinosaurs.
With ropes around necks of two great sauropod looking. I mean, they look just like a children's book with a.
Except for the ears and the clearly mammalian features, then sure.
A patasaurus on it or something, necks intertwined. And we have this motif repeated on two totally different places, separated by hundreds of years.
Obviously, if there are engravings of sauropod dinosaurs which are hundreds of years old, prior to any scientists' reconstructions of fossils, the only way that we could say that they could have done it so intelligently was if they had viewed the creatures for themselves, or at least had access to sketches or drawings or descriptions made by eyewitnesses of those creatures.
I like how they highlight just the parts that they're using to make it look like a sauropod. And if you highlight all the other parts of the drawing, suddenly it doesn't actually look like a sauropod. And it only looks like a sauropod in the vaguest way. Like, that tail is obviously impossible for an actual sauropod.
Yeah, sauropods did not have tails like that. What they're trying to argue is that, oh, they carved it so they saw it. So this is the same thing I use in my debate with Ken Hovind. Oh yeah, well, here's a medieval carving of an anthropomorphic rabbit riding on top of a lion. So by their logic, anthropomorphic rabbits really do exist in real life.
At around that time.
As some people look at the fossil record, as some people look at evidence that humans and dinosaurs lived at the same time, they see pictures, they see drawings, they see carvings, they see work in metal and weaving of...
Heck, what is this, 8-bit textile? It could be anything. Like, seriously. You're basically showing us like a 1980s level sprite and saying, oh, proof positive of dinosaurs. And I'm not saying anything about like the skill of the textile weaving, because it's obviously a style, right? But it's not exactly a style that lends itself to accurate depictions of anything.
Individuals that have actually reproduced dinosaurs. And the American Indian is one of those groups that has done that, especially in paintings and drawings.
Adrian Mayer, first of all, if we talk about...
Like how there's like, oh, the American Indians, they've made paintings of dinosaurs. Well, are you going to show any? Right. No, we're just going to switch to a different talking head.
That's like saying you're going to tell a joke, but you're not going to tell the punchline.
Right.
About what she's done on this, I think we ought to give her credit for doing a tremendous amount of research. And when I say data, I mean legend after legend after legend after legend of descriptions of the same kinds of creatures that were giant, terrible lizards.
He said terrible lizard. There you go, proof.
There were thunderbirds, there were water monsters given the same description from tribe after tribe after tribe across North America, but even in South America and Central America. We've got this robust, legendary lore, complete with descriptions of habitat, descriptions of habit, anatomical attributes. Where did all this come from?
And
well, since none of it matches dinosaurs or any other known real creature, it probably came from people's imaginations. Because people make stuff up all the time.
And so they're trying to argue so hardly like that. Oh, these carvings must be dinosaurs. All right, so this is how their argument really would work. All right, so if they really were dinosaurs, they would depict them more like this. They would be a lot more accurate.
Oh, okay, what is that from? Because that's great.
I got this from a guy named Paul Carter from the Answers to Answers in Genesis Facebook page. He brought this up. And what's also great is that on this carving, there is... I
don't know if people can see this. Can everyone see this?
Yeah, there's a mammoth and Mesozoic dinosaurs. Can everybody see it?
I mean, it's showing up. I don't know how. It looks like it's coming up pretty well. But okay, you need to find out what the source is of those images and give them to me because they are amazing and I want them.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'll be sure to ask. I'll be sure to ask Paul.
Okay.
Some people say, well, we don't want to have the Indian living at the dinosaur, so the Indian went ahead and found bones and then went ahead and assembled those bones into the proper shape and then put the musculature and the skin on the bones, and then based upon what they came up with, they then did a drawing showing what this dinosaur or reptile would look like in life.
Actually, you know what? I'm going to make it so everyone can actually see that a lot better. If you could hold those up to the camera again, because I just full screened you on the left-hand screen.
This is what I got from a guy named Paul Carter in the Answers to Answers in Genesis Facebook page. I told him I was preparing for my debate with Codium, and then he brought this up, and I was like, that is perfect.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah.
One other thing, so some of these dragon legends are actually a lot more. You can clearly tell that they're more mammal-like, and this is some dragon legends what YECs will never ever use. And yeah, it's like, look at that. It looks more like a lion.
Well, that bottom one actually is often just called a lion nowadays. You go and ask someone in China. Like,
understandably so.
Like one of the symbols for Hong Kong is a lion, but it looks like that. Like it's on a lot of the different banknotes. Because I don't know if it's still the case, but Hong Kong didn't have an official government banknote, so each bank just prints their own notes. But a lot of them had that quote lion on it.
And some YECs like have argued that this one, that one right there is a Dimetrodon, but
a Dimetrodon with two sets of front limbs and
with a long snake-like tail and and two separate fins. When it just had like that one giant fin.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, look at them. They look nothing like dinosaurs.
Yeah, it would be harder. It would be hard to find a way in which that would be less dinosaur-like. But I think I'm gonna go back to the video now. Thank you for that. It's much appreciated. All right, so let's.
Now, with all due respect to the skills of the American Indian, and there are a great many of them, I honestly don't know if paleontology hundreds of years ago was one of them.
Well, the very fact that we have these artifacts begs the question, how did they know to draw these? In other words, if they're...
How did they know to draw, Nintendo Entertainment System level art before the Nintendo Entertainment System? I don't know, but it's better evidence of time travel from like the 80s than it is of dinosaurs. So
yeah, it's like they're trying to argue so hard like that, oh, if humans and dinosaurs coexisted 6,000 years ago, then that disproves evolution. But it doesn't, but it does not at all. That would just mean like that some Mesozoic dinosaurs survived the KPG mass extinction event, and like that there were some surviving ones.
Yeah, I mean, the argument fails in two ways. First, it fails because these are not, they're obviously not dinosaurs. And two, it fails because even if they were, okay, well, that's cool, now what? Like, nothing about the theory of evolution says dinosaurs must go extinct. In fact, they didn't. Most of them did.
Because we have birds.
Right.
How is it that they all drew the same exact myth, and yet they're separated through distant time as well as distant geography? And the question, it's a tough one to answer because it depends on your worldview. And if you back up and think, if I just go based on the data, then it seems to suggest on its surface that these people real live people at some point encountered creatures that looked like this.
I've been informed that in a cave in France there's a mammoth seemingly engaged with or in combat with a dinosaur. Now, if that's so, that's very significant because even though mammoths are extinct, everybody accepts that mammoths and humans live together because you sometimes find spear points.
Oh, did they?
Museum. Yep.
Mammoth seemingly engaged with or in combat with a dinosaur. Now, if that's so, that's very significant because even though mammoths are extinct,
We're right there.
Oh, okay. What am I seeing? A mammoth or a mastodon? Hard to tell. It kind of looks like a mastodon, but that's really grainy. And a saber-toothed cat?
I haven't been to that Creation Museum since August 2018, and the last time that I went was when I was starting to steer away from YEC. But the last time I went, when I was at the very, very last, what's the word?
Sure.
The very last, I was starting to steer away from YEC.
Got it.
And I haven't went since, but it would be very interesting if I went back now, knowing that the fact that the guy who runs it now, he now knows that I am no longer a YEC, and so he definitely would try like to argue with me about it, and he even said that he wants me to come down to the museum and to challenge like all the things that they have on exhibit, like that Stegosaurus carving and whatnot, but I kind of feel like it would be a waste of my time because I kind of have a feeling that I'm not going to change his opinion.
I think I found the mammoth fighting a T-Rex that was just mentioned.
And I believe that Aaron Raw even talked about that in his video, Flintstone Archaeology.
I believe he did, yeah. Let me see if I can pull it up.
Oh, yeah, it's...
So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. There it is.
Yeah, that's not even a carving. Not even a carving.
Yeah, and there's probably a reason why he didn't show it, because he knows just how bad it is.
Oh yeah, I mean it's terrible.
everybody accepts that mammoths and humans live together because you sometimes find spear points of human spears in mammoth fossils or
That's right, you do, but you don't find them in T-Rex fossils. Funny that.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
mammoth skeletal remains in caves. And of course there are many drawings of mammoths by...
Wait, isn't that from British Columbia? That looks really familiar, but maybe I'm just imagining things.
people, and everybody agrees they're mammoths. So if mammoths and humans are together, and you see a picture of a mammoth and a dinosaur together, then obviously dinosaurs and humans were together too, which of course evolutionists say is impossible.
American Indians had this...
No one says it's impossible. People just say there's no evidence for it, and you haven't presented any, and even if you did, it wouldn't prove what you want it to.
We don't say it's impossible. We say it's very unlikely based off of the overwhelming evidence.
Yep.
Legend. They called this creature the grandfather of the buffalo.
I remember that painting.
And you know, that's an interesting description, because you're like, okay, what would a grandfather buffalo look like? Obviously it would have long hair, it would look like a buffalo, but they said it was much, much, much bigger. Well, there was a waterfall found in Minneapolis, and underneath this waterfall was this tusks of a mammoth. And Indians actually pointed to that spot and said that's where the grandfather of the buffalo lived. And what's fascinating is if they were able to understand the flesh, they were understand the hairy characteristics of this mammoth, there was only one way they could have known that, is if they would have actually seen the creature.
And once again we see...
Oh, okay. But again, like we said, one of the reasons we know that mammoths and humans interacted is because we find evidence of human-mammoth interaction in terms of physical remains. Where is that for the dinosaurs that you're talking about? There isn't any.
Yeah, and I also forgot to mention one other dragon from Dragon Legends. How much of a dinosaur does that look like?
I mean, that looks like a nightmare.
Looks like a half human, half lion, with a weird snake-like tail with two spikes on the end.
That the evolutionary time frame, that the layers in the rocks represent millions of years, comes to grief on things like this, which show that people, dinosaurs and mammoths and many creatures that we're familiar with today all lived at the same time.
First of all, what we have to understand now was not until the year 1822 when Gideon Mantle and his wife found the iguanodon tooth. And that was supposedly the absolute beginning of our understanding of dinosaurs. And modern academia will tell you that is when we discovered them. Well, the problem with that is that we have all these images of ancient people groups that had intimate knowledge of dinosaurs. They drew them on.
Except that they don't look like dinosaurs, damn it.
We have been, I know that we've been emphasizing that a lot, but it's like, that's the constant thing about YECs. Like, they constantly argue that these are dinosaurs, but they're not.
They don't even look like dinosaurs. Like, if you're going to argue that something is a dinosaur, step one should be, it looks like a dinosaur.
Vases, they were on pottery.
You know, that one thing that I showed you, like how they actually showed more accurate depictions of dinosaurs.
Yeah.
And if it is true that they had no knowledge of dinosaurs, then where in the world did all those images come from?
Their imagination.
The people went to the police and demanded that something be done.
Okay, but then when they start talking about some other things that they believed were true, historians will just discount it. Like, you know, Marco Polo's writing about dragons, Alexander the Great's talking about it.
You know the funny thing about Marco Polo writing about dragons? Marco Polo didn't write about anything. The travels of Marco Polo are... They don't even claim to be his writings. They are the writings of a man who spent some time in a jail cell with Marco Polo, and Marco Polo told him stories to pass the time.
And with that dragon being mentioned in it, from what I've read, it talks about it dragging its tail, and we know that dinosaurs never did that. It's because they had fused vertebrae, that they walked more horizontally, put their tail as balance, and with every single footprints we find, we have never found tail marks being dragged with it.
Yeah. The whole thing just doesn't add up.
This giant lizard that frightened his army. And there's all sorts of other accounts in history, as matter-of-fact accounts of great lizard-like beasts, and yet they're routinely discredited as not being true.
You know, it is a misnomer that some of these dragon legends, or all the dragon legends, are just a product of opium-inspired pagan religions. I mean, that is not the case at all. What you have...
There's some middle ground between actual dinosaurs and opium hallucinations. Like, holy crap, dude. You don't have to jump to that. It could just be that people make up things. Like, it doesn't have to be an opium-induced crazy talk. Goodness.
As you have actual historians, you have Herodotus, you have Flavius Josephus, you have Marco Polo that talk about dragons. Herodotus actually heard an account of flying reptiles, and he went and checked it out himself. And so, I mean, he showed the mettle of a true historian. 400 years later.
Yeah, the account was that winged snakes with feathery wings, so feathery winged snakes, would fly from the southern parts of the Nile beyond Egypt to the north every year, where they would all be slaughtered by ibises, and then they would just come back the next year from somehow, even though they all died. Sounds like a really likely story. I'm definitely on board.
Later, so
the
you
same
have
one that I already showed.
Oh yeah,
Flavius Josephus, an incredible Jewish historian, also talking about seemingly the same creature. You have this flying reptile. You have Marco Polo that, after his journey to China, is describing a huge dragon. He calls it a dragon with this tail that is really dragging through the sand, leaving these marks. And we come to the point
yeah, because dinosaurs didn't drag their tails.
I also even have a peer review paper about that.
Really? I mean, even look at me. I'm not dragging my tail, and I'm lying down sick in a blanket.
Right here. Here's a peer review paper about how dinosaurs did not drag their tails. I was
There
going
you
to
go.
use this in my debate with Cody, but just lack of time, and we got distracted about a few things.
Yeah. That's all right, though.
Yeah, let's go on.
Yeah.
have to ask ourselves, are all these people just making this up? They're describing creatures that were not supposed to be alive then. According to evolutionary theory, that creatures like this were supposed to be separated by mankind for 65 to 70 million years. Yet, here we have respectable people writing in their history books, this is what I've seen, this is what I've witnessed. And they sound just like dinosaurs.
Well, I think we should take the testimony of these very reliable historians. For the most part, I think that they were very candid in what they were writing about when it came to historical narrative. And if they were talking about these large, formidable creatures, I don't see why there's any reason to question.
Is that another Ceratosaurus?
I believe so, but
I like the first one better.
Yeah, same here. The other one looks a lot more menacing.
Question that.
If man and dinosaurs never lived together,
make not one cameo, but two.
I know, it's crazy.
Were separated by millions of years, then we have to say all those ancients were mistaken. And I don't believe that we should accuse them of that because they were intelligent people like you and I. They built cities before the flood. We're told that they had...
Where is one of them? Oh, there were cities before the flood, in the layers where the dinosaurs drown. Okay, find one, and tell us why you know it's before the flood.
And when they are talking about the flood, they're probably talking about the Genesis flood being a worldwide flood. I actually was going to print out this article that I found online for this, but I totally forgot. So I can leave it as a comment. I actually did find a scientific article. Not from a Christian source, but talking about how, yes, it is possible that the flood did happen, just not as a worldwide flood, just as more as like a catastrophic local flood. And I totally...
Right. And I mean, local catastrophes are totally a thing. There's no reason. And one of the things that you notice is a lot of cultures have very different, but still they're all flood myths. Well, it's because cultures encounter catastrophic floods.
Musical instruments, they had tools of iron and
bronze on that. And so in one of those legends about a flood, it actually talks about a talking goat. I don't ever remember a talking goat in the Genesis flood.
No, yeah.
Now you think about that. Before the flood, they had metal tools. That implies they had to find the metals, they had to mine them, and they had to smelt them, exactly like we do today. So let us not dare accuse ancient people of being unintelligent and untechnological.
The Bible does use the term dragons over and over again. It talks about ocean dragons, it talks about flying dragons, it talks about land dragons. And that seems to fit with these great reptilian beasts that include the dinosaurs. And it makes sense. If those things were so dominant on the planet before the flood and certainly right after the flood, they would have made it into the history of the culture.
In 1845, a newspaper in the town of Geelong in Victoria published a sketch of a creature that the local Aboriginal people had described as a bunyip.
Common Aboriginal term for monster, it's often thought of as mythical, but this Aboriginal had big, deep claw marks across his chest, and the description he gave, presumably through an interpreter at the time, was the basis of this sketch in the Geelong Advertiser, and it looks very much like one of the duck-billed dinosaurs.
Wait, what? That drawing didn't look like a duck-billed dinosaur?
Yeah, definitely not a Parasaurolophus.
Ah, man. It looked like a duck-billed dinosaur. You showed the picture, dude. We know it didn't.
In fact, some large bones
There's even
were
some YECs
reported.
to even think that Parasaurolophus even could breathe fire. It was
Oh yeah, it was storing chemicals in the horn. Oh my god.
But yeah, that's been thoroughly debunked.
All right, well, my voice is actually failing, and we're getting up to about an hour and a half. So I think what I'm going to do now is, you guys have any questions? Let me know, and I think if Eric wants to, we can do a part 2. We are.
Yeah, for sure.
We're about a third of the way through this, a little bit more. So we could even possibly do a part 3. Let's see. Being sick has put a delay on my video production, but I'm hoping to get something out later this week if I can do audio recording. And if I can't, I might ask a friend to do some audio recording for me, just to get the scripts audio recorded and I can edit the video. Because I can't I can't audio record like this. I can barely live stream like this right now. But thank you very much for coming. If you have any questions, pop them in the chat real quick. So let's see. If you haven't already and you're interested in any of my off-topic content, that's on my second channel, Top Hats Off. You can find the link on my YouTube page. Someone might be able to post it in the the chat. But,
all right, we have a question from Paleo 101, aka Camus Skelly. Dapper Dino, why is it almost 2020 and people are still spouting out crap like this?
Oh, well, because they've tricked themselves into believing that it supports their version of Christianity. Basically,
when it
doesn't.
Doesn't at all.
Yeah. All right. So, do I want to slam my head against a brick wall from Dark Knight Apologetics? I mean, I might actually. So.
But yeah, it's people like this that make people steer away from Christianity that much more, saying that, oh, Christians are all anti-science, which there are some that are, to be fair.
Oh, yeah. But there are also more that aren't.
Right, yeah.
All right, well, thank you, everyone, for coming. I'm sorry that I was a little bit under the weather for this. I'm going to stop talking now. And I'll probably stream at some point, maybe tomorrow or something, on my off-topic channel, but it might just be me killing demons and not talking about something. I don't know.
And y'all don't have to worry for parts 2 and 3. I got a ton of other debunks of Dragon Legends and whatnot, like for future stuff. So we got plenty more. Plenty more stuff to talk about.
Yeah. Trim Tarask, send a cure disease potion. In fact, just a link in the comments, an Amazon link to one, and I'll pop it onto my my Amazon wish list. All right, bye everybody.
Thank you.